The power of leverage, how smart debt builds wealth. Good evening, everyone. I want you to think back to the first time someone told you, stay away from debt. Maybe it was a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe it was fear itself whispering in your ear, and I understand why. Debt has ruined lives. It has buried families. It has kept good people awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering how they're going to make it to the next paycheck. But here's what nobody told us growing up. There are two kinds of debt in this world. There is debt that drains you, and there is debt that builds you. There is debt that chains you to your past, and there is debt that launches you into your future. Tonight, I'm not here to tell you that borrowing money is dangerous. You already know that. Tonight, I'm here to tell you something far more important, that almost every fortune you have ever admired was built at some point on someone else's money. Think about that for a second. The house you dream of owning, bought with a mortgage, the small business you admire on Main Street, started with a loan, the tech company in your pocket, the one you use every single day, funded in its earliest days by investors and borrowed capital. Somebody somewhere took a calculated risk with money that wasn't fully theirs yet, and they built something real. This is called leverage, and leverage is not a dirty word. Leverage is a tool. A hammer can build a house or it can break a window. It depends entirely on the hand that holds it. Money borrowed with wisdom, borrowed with a plan, borrowed with discipline, is not a burden. It is a bridge. It is the bridge between where you are standing right now and where your potential actually lives. Let me ask you something. If I told you that you could open a small shop today, but you had to save up for it in cash, working overtime for the next 15 years, or you could take a well-structured loan, open it next month, and start building income, experience, and equity right now, which path actually gets you closer to freedom? This is the secret that wealthy families understand, and that so many of us were never taught. Rich people don't avoid debt. Rich people avoid bad debt. They run from the credit card balance that finances a vacation they can't afford. They run from the loan that buys a car depreciating in value every single day. That kind of debt buys you a feeling for a moment and a burden for years. But good debt buys you an asset that grows. Good debt buys you a business that produces income. Good debt buys you an education that multiplies your earning power for the rest of your life. Good debt buys you property that appreciates while you sleep. The wealthy don't fear the loan, they interview it. They ask it hard questions. What will this money build? What will it return? How long before it pays for itself and then starts paying me? I want you to picture two people. Person A saves every dollar, refuses to ever borrow a cent, and waits 20 years to buy a small rental property in cash. Person B, at the very same starting point, uses a mortgage, buys that same property in year 1, rents it out, lets the tenants pay down the loan, and by year 20 owns not one property, but 4 or 5 because they reinvested the growing equity again and again. Same discipline, same intelligence, completely different outcome. The difference wasn't hard work. The difference was the willingness to use leverage wisely, on purpose, with a plan. Now I have to be honest with you, because a stage like this deserves honesty, not just hype. Leverage cuts both ways. Debt taken without a plan is not a bridge, it's a trap door. Borrowing to impress people who don't even care about you. Borrowing to numb a bad feeling with a new purchase. Borrowing without understanding the interest, the terms, the repayment. That is not building wealth. That is building anxiety with a monthly bill attached. So this is not a speech telling you to run out tomorrow and borrow recklessly. This is a speech telling you to stop being afraid of a tool that, used correctly, has built nearly every fortune in modern history. So how do you actually do this? How do you turn borrowed money into freedom instead of a chain around your ankle? First, never borrow for a liability. Only borrow for an asset. Ask yourself, will this put money into my pocket or take money out of it every month for the rest of my life? A liability drains you. An asset feeds you. Second, understand the numbers before you sign anything. Know your interest rate. Know your repayment schedule. Know your break-even point. The person who understands the math controls the loan. The person who doesn't, the loan controls them. Third, start small and let success build your credibility. You don't need a massive loan on day one. You need a smart, manageable one that proves the model works. Once it works, doors open that were closed before. Fourth, always have a repayment plan before you have the money in hand. Not a hope, a plan. Wealth is not built by people who wing it. Wealth is built by people who calculate, then act boldly on that calculation. And fifth, maybe the most important one, separate emotion from decision. Debt taken out of fear, out of pride, out of impatience, almost always fails. Debt taken out of strategy, patience, and vision. That is the debt that changes generations. Because let's be clear about what we're really talking about tonight. This isn't really about loans. It's about permission. Permission to stop waiting for some perfect, fully funded future that may never arrive. Permission to use every legitimate tool available to you, the same way the wealthy families, the seasoned investors, and the great entrepreneurs before you have always done. They did not wait until they had all the money. They built the plan, found the capital, and let the asset pay them back over time. So I want to leave you with this. Your dream, that business, that property, that degree, that next chapter of your life. It might not be 20 years away. It might not require you to save every dollar in isolation for the next 2 decades. It might simply require you to borrow smart, borrow with a plan, and let time and discipline do what they have always done for the people who came before you. Debt is not your enemy. Ignorance about debt is your enemy. Fear without knowledge is your enemy. But a loan, taken wisely in service of a real asset with a real plan behind it, that is not a weight around your neck. That is rocket fuel under your feet. So go out there, do the homework, run the numbers, talk to people who have done it before you, and when the right opportunity comes, backed by the right plan, don't be afraid to use every tool available to build the life you actually want. Because the people who are building wealth right now in this very moment are not the ones who waited for permission. They are the ones who understood that sometimes the fastest way to become rich is to be brave enough and smart enough to borrow your way there. Thank you.